I was a teacher in a further education department of a local school in Exeter for young people with additional needs. And part of my role is to support people post 16, so 16 to 19, support people to progress to the next step of their lives. So I was accumulating evidence for what they might need. I was also supporting them to kind of find and explore their passions and interests so that could also be communicated to future provisions. The young people in my class would transition from school to a post-school provision, and often that would coincide with transitioning from home to a residential setting, and at the same time that's happening, you're transitioning from child to adult services. So the big word really was transition. The young people were facing a huge change in their lives at the point when they finished school. So there are some amazing things for people to go on to do in Exeter and in Devon. Fantastic social care-based centres, education provisions, groups like ours. There's some amazing things going on, but the reality is there's just not quite enough of it. So it's quite a common story, and it's becoming an increasingly common story that people get to the end of their school life and they have very little choice about what they can go on to do, and some people actually have nothing at all. So that obviously is not okay. These are young people with huge amounts of interests and abilities and passions and skills that they've developed over their time at school and with their families, and for that all to be going to waste is just a real tragedy. And so that's what motivated myself and my business partner Kath to set up the Pelican Project. So we didn't really know how we were going to do that, and I think 5 years in, I'm not entirely sure we know how still now, but we thought it would be something to do with providing meaningful and creative activities for adults with additional needs that also immerse people within mainstream networks and mainstream cultures. So yeah, we started off running some multi-arts workshops at Exeter Phoenix, and although that kind of thing is not where we're at now, a lot of the themes and things that we tested and things that we learned are still very much rooted in that relationship between our neurodiverse members, or Pelicans as we like to call them, and a mainstream place such as Exeter Phoenix, and some expert or some established artists. So we've really developed from that point. So that's what we started to do. We started just to try and explore ways that we could provide some meaningful activity for the young people we're working with, but also promote the value that they have for the community. And those two things are equally as important, really. So it's as much about people having something to do that's worthwhile and that they enjoy and they can learn from, but also trying to really help the community wake up to this amazing group of people that are often marginalised and forgotten about. So yeah, that's where the journey began, really. So we're actually set up as a community interest company, which with charitable aims. So like a community interest company and a charity, although structurally they are very different, the outward community-facing side of things, they're very similar. So we went down the community interest company route because as two people trying to do what we're doing, it was the most appropriate for us. It was a little bit more achievable, really, with the resources that we had. And I'm really glad we've gone down that route. I mean, one of the initial principles of the project was that I really felt that what we were trying to do wasn't charity, it was just reality. And we've learned later on down the road that there are so many thousands of organisations trying to do good things that you need to be able to appeal for people's support. So yeah, we are very similar in the way we run to a charity. I was fortunate enough to have the business partner that helped me set up set up with me the Pelican Project, Kath. She's an absolute genius and so clued up on how to do that kind of thing. She'd set up multiple community interest companies before. So she was able to do that relatively straightforwardly. And I would say to anyone that if you're wanting to set something up, don't let that process be the barrier, because it is actually doable. There are loads of other massive barriers to it that perhaps I would warn people about a bit more, but that one was fairly straightforward. It's a case of paperwork, which is super boring, but it's doable. So yeah, in terms of setting up the Pelican Project, that was pretty plain sailing. It's the keeping it going, which is the really challenging bit.
If you and your charity like to be featured on Charitable Waves, you can send an email to my website on rebeccahorton.com. Every community has a story. Everyone has a voice. Together, we can achieve anything.